A few years back now, PlayStation made one of the biggest acquisitions in gaming history when they purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion. And at the time, this looked like a bit of a win for Sony because Bungies were the creators of Halo and they were also developers behind Destiny. They were also one of the few studios in the industry that actually had genuine live service experience, which was exactly what PlayStation was looking for. Sony didn't just buy Bungie because of Destiny, they bought them because they believed that Bungie could help lead PlayStation into the future of live service gaming. But now if we fast forward a couple of years, that deal is looking worse and worse every single year. And that's because Sony has now announced a $765 million impairment loss connected to Bungie, and that's a massive red flag. Now, if you don't know what an impairment loss is, here's a simple explanation. When a company buys another company, they're usually paying for more than just physical assets. They're also paying for future profits, technology, talents, and intellectual property, and all of that type of stuff. So when Sony bought Bungie for $3.6 billion, they believe that Bungie will continue growing and making them huge profits. And they also believe that Bungie would be a major part of PlayStation's future. An impairment loss basically means Sony now believes that Bungie is worth way less than they originally paid. That $765 million write-down is essentially Sony admitting that, yeah, this investment is not performing the way we expected it to. And honestly, that shouldn't surprise anyone paying attention over the last few years because Sony acquired Bungie and things have gone downhill fast. And if we start with Destiny 2, even before the Sony acquisition, Destiny 2 already had problems. The game still had a loyal player base, but there was already growing fatigue around the seasonal model that the game had. Players were getting tired of the repetitive content, and they were also getting upset about disappearing expansions, and Bungie constantly removing older content from the game. And despite Destiny still making money, reports started coming out that Bungie was missing revenue targets internally after the Sony acquisition, and that's the important part here. Destiny 2 wasn't and still isn't collapsing overnight, but it clearly wasn't growing enough to justify a $3.6 billion acquisition either. Sony didn't spend billions just to maintain a slowly declining live service game. They expected Bungie to become a powerhouse. And instead, Destiny 2 started feeling like a game stuck in maintenance mode while Bungie desperately searched for its next big hit. And then that's where Marathon enters. Marathon was supposed to be Bungie's next major franchise. This was the project Sony was clearly betting on for long term, but almost immediately people were skeptical. Extraction shooters are already a difficult genre to break into, and Marathon didn't exactly light the internet on fire when it was revealed. A lot of people were confused about what the game even was. Others were disappointed that Bungie was reviving Marathon as an extraction shooter instead of making something closer to the original game, and the bigger issue in the gaming industry is that it's already oversaturated with live service titles, and then they're all chasing the same audience. Everyone wants to be the next Fortnite, or everyone wants to be the next Destiny, but most of these games fail, and Marathon started looking less like Bungie innovating and more like them chasing trends. And that's sad coming from developers who have made some of the best games to ever exist. They should have never tried to split up their audience trying to build another live service franchise, and they probably should have just stuck to what people actually wanted, which was Destiny 3. Whether people love or hate Destiny 2, the reality is that the Destiny brand still has a massive audience and there's still demand for it. There's still players begging online for a proper sequel with a fresh start in a new engine with new systems and a complete reset for the franchise. Instead, Bungie spent years stretching Destiny 2 further and further while trying to branch out into another risky live service game in Marathon. And now they're paying the price for it. And to be fair, this isn't just a Bungie problem. This is happening across the entire gaming industry right now. We've got huge publishers across the industry making massive acquisitions and chasing live service trends, and they're all spending insane amounts of money and expecting an infinite growth forever after that. Look at Microsoft spending billions acquiring studios while also shutting teams down and struggling to justify exclusives. Or look at EA forcing live service mechanics in the games for years and years, and then you look at Ubisoft, they've been chasing trends on multiple projects and they're all underperforming. And then look at Warner Brothers games betting on live service games like Suicide Squad, and then they completely collapse. The gaming industry became obsessed with recurring revenue and engagement instead of simply making fun and great games. And then Sony also fell into that same trap, because when Sony bought Bungie, it honestly felt like they rushed into it and they were panicking about live service games. They saw the success of games like Fortnite and Warzone or things like Apex, and they wanted their own slice of it. But the problem is, PlayStation was built on its reputation of polished single-player experiences, and games like God of War or Spider-Man or even Ghost of Tsushima. And then suddenly they started chasing a completely different strategy, and Bungie was supposed to lead that. Instead, Sony is now a $765 million impairment loss tied to them. Declining confidence in Destiny 2, uncertainty around Marathon, layoffs and internal issues, and a studio that looks nowhere near as valuable as what it was years ago. And that's what makes this whole situation so interesting, because Bungie didn't just become a disappointing acquisition, they became a symbol of a much bigger problem in the gaming industry. Studios and publishers are spending billions chasing trends, live service money and infinite growth, while completely ignoring the actual thing that made players care about these companies in the first place, and now we're starting to see the consequences of that everywhere. I think it's time that Sony goes back to what they're known for, which is good single-player games, and they start getting the company back on the right path, because if they continue the way that they're going now, they're going to struggle in the future, especially with a new generation coming out in a year or two. Anyways guys, that's all I've got for you on this video today. I want to thank you guys for sticking around on the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.